to Drop In Being, day 2. Thank you for being here from your higher self. Your higher self thanks you for being here today with me, Maeve Lee, to activate the embodiment of your highest potential. And this is really helpful to do here with me so that as someone who has some of that clarity, those activations already within, then by me speaking and the vibrational reality and the experience upon you, then you can grasp and welcome it into your body. And that's why these transmissions are so important, these activations, because we cannot gain momentum, we cannot gain the clarity that we seek with the same system that's creating the dysfunction, right? Albert Einstein says that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again with the mind that created the problem in the first place. So what we're trying to do here is create an open loop of wisdom, an open loop in your own energetic system, so that you can take in the transmissions just as you would medicine, right? And that this happens in community, in partnership with other people or with other entities or beings in the world. And the interesting thing about activations is that activations can be a medicine. They are the medicine for healing or coming back into harmony with oneself. And sometimes that comes with a bad experience, and sometimes it's a good experience, right? And so that's a really good example of why we don't judge, why we don't say this is good or bad, because we don't know that thing or the consequences of that experience are going to be good or bad. It's really just our own ego that is labeling things as good or bad. This is a natural part of our psychology, of our mind, is especially when we're talking about memory. So when there's two parts of our human memory. One is called encoding, and then the other is recall. And so our brain will classify and categorize experiences, feelings, beliefs, things like that. And it will categorize it and then tuck it away in our mind, in our memory. And that actually happens really quickly. It's really only within the first 2 to 7 seconds. And then everything else is actually considered long-term memory, at least in Western psychology, right? And so the rest of that is like recall. And then that has to do with whether or not we can actually pull that information from the back of our brain into the frontal cortex of saying, hey, remember when this thing happened? Or what was that person's name again? Those type of recall abilities can kind of get jumbled up depending on the emotion at the time, your attention of what was happening, your perception of what was happening, the amount of bandwidth you have in your memory, because that is kind of a limited, finite, conditioned amount. We can definitely condition ourselves, or just like you condition your body, right? But we can train the mind to remember more, and that's actually within our capabilities. And so you can always learn to do that. But in school, I learned that in Western psychology, they say that there's about 7 windows of memory and things that we can remember at any given moment. And if it's full, though, of other emotions or things like that, then we can kind of get lost in that. And that new information can get lost or discarded because it's not seen as so relevant. And that's why the difficult memories stick more than the good memories, because we have a survival mind. The base of the brain, the lizard brain, is for survival, and so we remember things that will help us navigate risk in the future over something that was good and helpful, right? And so one of the suggestions I always have for students is to go ahead and make change before it becomes a survival moment, before it becomes a crisis. can you make change based off of your own intuition, your own wisdom, your own desires, your own feeling well, and saying, I think this would feel better for me if I go in this direction, and not wait until like something dramatic happens in your life to push you in that direction, right? So this wisdom is really you being able to have the discernment and then the kind of discipline to go ahead and make those steps without being forced to make the steps. This is how we become the creator of our life instead of feeling like the victim or the kind of reactionary part of ourselves, where we're kind of forced to make that decision then. One thing that really affects the way that we also remember things is who we think we are. It creates our perception and it creates how we perceive the world and interface with the world. We could literally be looking at some of the same things and you will perceive it completely differently than I have. For example, I'll give you an example with my husband. We have been together for over 4 years now, and we consider ourselves insightful people. We have a really large desire to be insightful, to be conscious, and yet we still have our programming, right? And so what we're committed to is seeing through that programming, seeing through the matrix, and obviously relationships are one of the biggest teachers. And so it was something that we had recently really moved through, but it was a practice of almost 4 years, really of some intensity and of us learning, okay, am I really seeing the reality? I would say, well, you did this and it made me feel this way. And he's like, but that's not my attention. Or I would say that too. I would say, but am I really that type of person who would XYZ, right? So we could see where we were putting in our own projections of, oh, if somebody does this, that means this. And we were kind of filling in the blanks. We were filling in the intentionality of why that person would have said that or done that action or whatever. And it wasn't until we were able to really practice sitting back and saying, okay, is that really what he meant? Is that really what she meant? What are the other possibilities? What am I projecting? What do I use? What is my pattern when I'm feeling this way to believe that the other person is doing or being or whatever? And so this type of intentionality really makes you take the forest from the trees, to remove yourself. And that's in most spiritual teachings. They will say that this is the observer mind, is being able to pull back and really watch the drama that's happening, watch the theatric role playing that's happening, and extract yourself from it so that you can have conscious thought of what's really happening. And that's where you become a master of creating what you desire, because then you can see, oh wait, I'm running this program of what I think or believe because of my past, and that program is actually leading me to more destruction or more of the same patterns of maybe disconnection, frustration, resentments, feeling like you don't belong in relationships, right? And so we can play out these same roles because we're trying to fix them. We're trying to create some kind of remedy and to kind of tie the loop up nicely and be done. We have to remember that we have to try something different in order to get different results. And that's what you're here doing. So congratulations for being here. If you're still in this video, I congratulate you. Please comment down below, what is something, a pattern, that you see yourself engaging in that would be really helpful for you to shift? And what is the one thing that you can say, okay, I'm not going to respond in this way anymore because I don't want those old results. I want these other results, these new results. As we're activating these things together, I want you to just take a deep breath and take a mindful moment about your body. So a lot of times when we're talking about these type of topics, we're here because we feel like we need to fix something in ourselves. We feel like there's something wrong. And I encourage you to get off that hamster wheel of self-improvement, self-development, of being a seeker. I hear that from spiritual people a lot is, well, I'm just a seeker. I'm a seeker of truth. Okay, but truth isn't to be sought, it's to be recognized. Yes, instead of trying to seek it, which is always chasing it, let's just be it. Let's be conscious. Let's be whatever you are hoping to create in your life. Be it first. Be it today. be it in this moment. We lead with our energetic blueprint, we lead with our energetic reality, and that's how we can't do this work just in the mind, because the mind seems really rational. Those patterns that we were just talking about that say, okay, well, if someone says this, then that means this, and then also society usually confirms those fears, those patterns, those distortions. And so then we kind of get in this cycle, and I'm here to tell you, trauma sounds rational. Same example as before. I'm activated in a trauma response, and my husband would say, but babe, that's really not happening. Like, I am here for you. I am listening to you, and what you're saying of like the ways that I'm not listening to you, or I'm not validating you like I am, or I don't, or he would say something that would encourage my growth instead of validating where I am and where I felt stuck in. And while there's a nuance of doing both things, because I so seriously believed that men in my life could not validate who I was or my own soul journey, because that's really a part of my chart, is to be misunderstood by a lot of people, the intensity I bring or whatever it might be, because of the way that I think about the world, and that has been my reality. But that doesn't mean that it's on my husband to fix that for me, or that it even needs to be fixed at all, right? But what I'm saying is, when I would project that upon him, that he was incapable of validating or being there for me or supporting me, then in that way I would not see the things that he would do that were validating. And then he would say, but I did this, is that not validating? And then I would have to sit there and be like, oh, you're right, it was actually. And then I would, digest that and be like, okay, why didn't I see it? And then next time, practice actively seeing it. Like, okay, he said that, and I agree, like, I'm not seeing those things, but then I remember that he actually did those things. And so that's a really good tangible example of how we project what we think the world is and how we fit into it, and then we internalize the dysfunctions, or we say nobody understands us, or we make these blanket statements that could be based in something that sounds rational. Back to my original point, because I could have, in the back and forth that he would and I would have, is we would have this understanding of like, okay, I would say, but you did this, or society says, like, if he doesn't respond in this exact way, then that means something dysfunctional about him. And even though those markers were also there in a certain way, it's because I was seeing them in that certain way, because I believed that to be true. And it sounded very rational, and I would fight tooth and nail, and he would do the same thing about his own things, right? And so we're fact-checking. We are fact-checking the reality versus the distortion, right? And the projections that we have on the people around us. And the closer they are, the more we project, the more intensely those projections come up, because it's so much more intimate. And again, it sounds so very rational. And so there's this nuance, this really high level discernment that's happening when we are doing this work, when we're seeing the matrix from what we think it is and we're seeing it for what it really actually is, right? We have to want to see it differently. We have to have some internal motivations to say, you know what, I know that that's not working for me anymore. I can see where that rationale actually leads to a lot of dysfunction, and it sounds rational, but it's not getting me the results that I want, right? It still leads to the same pattern of disconnection and harm. And these things are really a lot to digest in the moment. They can take a lot of energy for us to do, and the more that you do it, the more you're on this path, it'll become easier, and it'll become less personally charged and emotionally activated. And that's why it's helpful, like I said earlier in this video, to have these videos help you activate these realities within your own body and psyche and your soul, because you can do this work and get lost in it for a long time. But if somebody who has that activation is speaking it onto you, that's the original medicine. It was Om. The original word was, the first word was Om. Frequency medicine. Frequency. There's a reason why a lot of people have a difficult time speaking their truth and have thyroid issues, because we're not speaking our truth. We're not enacting our free will to our highest potential. And then we get shut down, we have immune disorders, we're suppressing. And this shows up for women typically in autoimmune disorders, and for men typically with heart disease and high blood pressure and kind of the things with the blood, which is and the heart. And in both, I want to just help us remember that in this, there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of backup of emotional difficulty. This is why a lot of spiritual teachings talk about when we are consciously living, we are able to live in the present moment without attachments to the future or the past. And this is a practice done in meditation. All of the science says so. And when you start meditating for yourself, you will see the benefits pretty quickly of your ability to detach from the stories, the emotions, and the kind of loops that you're stuck in. Because when we decide, especially right away in the morning, before your eyes really open, before you look at anything, before you move, just really encourage yourself to use that limbo state between sleep and awakeness to create the reality you want for the day. And even if you create the reality for the morning and you only last an hour before feeling some old emotions, you can then go back and sit down even for 2 minutes. Just make it simple, 1 minute if you need to, and come back here, come back to your body. This is why we call it dropping into being, because we are being here first. Your priority is always and always just here. It is in maintaining the frequency that you desire and want to be in to lead an easy, enjoyable life. Does that mean that you won't experience hardships? No. But your level of what you believe is hard is really up to your own perception. And so we are, as we are training ourselves to have less reaction outward and to be more masterful here in our energetics, then we will see that there's a lot less reactivity, a lot less suffering that we are going through, because we are the master of our reality, which then things happen and they just blow off of you. You're like, oh, I see that. Or you have compassion for it. You know, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you're like, okay, that person must be having a bad day, or send love to that person. And you don't, oh my God, and then you're taking that on, and now you have become an active participant in someone else's suffering and accepted it as your own. And now it's just confirming that you think that life is hard, and we go down the same rabbit hole. Does this sound familiar? So, if it does, go ahead and comment. This sounds familiar. What cycle are you going to interrupt? You know, we're interrupting these patterns, interrupting these cycles. We're opening these closed loops, and we're opening it up. So if you look at the sacred spiral has, like, instead of it feeding on itself and closing in on itself like some spirals do, it actually opens up, and you see this replicated in nature. It'll open up and it'll expand as it gets out to the outer edges. Because in doing that, we're encouraging new energy, new thoughts. We can't recycle and recycle and recycle the same experiences and same beliefs and same thoughts without, and think that we're going to get anywhere new. Make the agreement with yourself to not take on other people's suffering and to not instigate your own suffering, right? One of the biggest questions I ask students is, where are you addicted to your own suffering? Where are you addicted to your own suffering? How are you addicted to your own suffering? What can you do to interrupt that cycle of addiction? You know, addiction really just isn't about a substance or a person that we can be addicted to. It's about the emotional wheel, it's the emotional roller coaster that we go on that is predictable, that we're used to. And so we're also saying that you want to get off that. So in summary, we were talking about activations and how to properly activate the life that you want versus the life that you have. So we're interrupting the suffering cycles. We're having insight into our own cycles of thought and belief. And we engage with people who activate those realities within us. So that my last tip for this today is that you go ahead and find someone online, or read a book, or watch a movie, or only focus on the things around you that activate this reality. For example, if you want to have a healthy family, right? You watch movies where families are close, they're connected, they love each other, they have compassion. Don't watch movies where there's dysfunction and brokenness. And better yet, just go internal and give yourself imagine that healthy family unit. Imagine it happening within yourself, within your family, within your household, and believe that that's happening now, and it'll start happening. You will start having more patience with your kids. You will have some more compassion for your spouse, and find ways that you're creating that shift in the household, and your reality will start forming right before your eyes. So thank you for being here with me, and I will see you on the next video.